I grew up spending my summers on my uncle's farm near Decatur, Alabama. It was a pretty isolated patch of land, miles of dirt roads, fields in every direction, and not much else. Just me, my Uncle Ray, and sometimes a couple of seasonal workers who helped out during harvest. That particular summer, 2 years ago, I was 17, and my parents thought a few weeks of hard work out in the country would build character before senior year. I wasn't exactly thrilled, but I didn't have a choice. The place always had a kind of eerie quiet to it. You don't notice how loud the world is until you're somewhere like that. No cars, no sirens, just wind and bugs and the occasional distant howl at night. The farmhouse itself was over 100 years old. My uncle had patched it up enough to live in, but it creaked like it was trying to tell you something. I slept in the upstairs room facing the cornfield. The first time I saw her was on my third night there. I'd just gone to bed, window cracked open to let the heat out. There was no AC, just a rattling box fan and the sound of crickets. I remember looking out at the corn, tall and still, glowing faintly silver in the moonlight. Then I saw movement. Just a flash, like someone ducking between the rows. I squinted. After a second or two, a figure appeared. A woman. She was standing about 20 feet into the corn, perfectly still. I couldn't make out her face, just that she was barefoot, wearing something white or pale, and her hair was hanging down past her shoulders. She didn't move, didn't wave, didn't run. She just stood there, staring up at the house. At first, I figured it had to be one of the workers. Maybe someone got lost or was messing around, but it felt off. She wasn't moving at all, not even a twitch. I blinked and she was gone. I told Uncle Ray about it the next morning. He just kind of shrugged. Probably some damn teenager from the next property over. They like to drink back in the fields, sneak onto our land. Don't worry about it. So I didn't, for a while. But then it kept happening. Not every night, just enough to unsettle me. Sometimes she was farther back in the corn, sometimes closer. Always standing, always facing the house, always perfectly still. Once, I tried running down there with a flashlight. The second I left the porch, she was gone. I swept the beam through the rows, yelling, trying to convince myself it was just some girl screwing with me. But the air in those rows, it felt thick, like I'd stepped underwater. I got turned around after a few minutes and had to follow the fence line to get back. After that, I started keeping my curtains shut at night. About a week later, I woke up one morning and Uncle Ray was cursing on the porch. The scarecrow had been torn down. We kept one out in the middle of the corn, mostly for show, wearing one of my uncle's old flannels and a beat-up hat. Now it was lying on the ground with its arms broken off. I helped him put it back up, but something about it creeped me out. Like it had been pulled down violently, not just fallen over in the wind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept glancing at the window even with the curtain closed. Just after midnight, I finally gave in and peeked out. She was there, closer this time, maybe 10 feet from the edge of the corn. I could make out her face a little now. Her mouth looked wrong, too wide, and she had no whites in her eyes, just black, like two pits. She didn't blink. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding. I told myself not to look again. I even started walking toward my uncle's room to wake him up. But halfway down the hall, I stopped. Something scraped the porch. Not footsteps, dragging. Then a soft knock. Not at the front door. At my window. I ran back in, too scared to even breathe. The knock came again. Soft. Deliberate. I froze in the middle of the room, staring at the curtain. Then it stopped. When I finally worked up the courage to peek again, she was gone. The next morning, the scarecrow was down again. Same thing, arm snapped. This time, its head was gone. I was done playing it cool. I told Uncle Ray everything. He didn't laugh. He just went real quiet. Then he said, I saw her once too, when I was your age. I asked him what the hell he meant. He told me this story about his dad, my grandfather. Said back in the 60s, there was a drifter woman who came through the area. People said she was crazy, maybe dangerous. Supposedly, she wandered onto a farm about 5 miles from here and attacked a kid with a kitchen knife. The boy survived, but the town was furious. A group of men went after her, including my grandfather. They found her hiding in a cornfield. They didn't wait for the cops. Uncle Ray said nobody talks about what they did to her, just that they handled it. That same night, the barn on that farm burned down. Her body was never found. After that, a few people started seeing things in the corn. Always a woman, always staring. Sometimes she knocked, sometimes she whispered, but she always came back during the harvest. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept a knife under my pillow. No more peeking, just listening. But sometime before dawn, I must have passed out. When I woke up, there were muddy footprints on the porch. Bare feet. Small, like a woman's. And this time, they led away from the corn, toward the house. They stopped directly beneath my window. There was a single handprint on the glass, long fingers. Too long. Uncle Ray called someone that day. An old guy from town who came out with sage, some kind of herbs, and a bucket of what I think was animal blood. He walked the perimeter of the field, muttering prayers I didn't recognize. He burned something that smelled like burnt rubber and salt. That night was quiet. So was the next. We stayed one more week. No sign of her again. But on my last night, just before I closed the curtain, I looked out. The scarecrow was back up, and it was wearing a dress. Pale, torn, just like hers. Uncle Ray swore he didn't do it. Neither did I. We burned it the next morning before I left. But sometimes I still dream about her. The black eyes, the too wide smile, the way she never blinked. And I swear, last week, I woke up to something tapping my window at home. But I live 2 hours away now, far from the corn. Or at least, I thought I was. My family has owned a hunting cabin deep in the Talladega National Forest for generations. It's old and bare bones. No plumbing, no cell signal, just a generator for power and a rusted-out wood stove that smokes if you don't stack it right. But it's tradition. Every year around October, the men in the family head up there for a long weekend of hunting, whiskey, and complete disconnection from the world. 2 years ago, my cousin Tyler came with us for the first time. He was 13, a little awkward, always buried in his phone back home. I remember he complained on the drive up, something about not wanting to be stuck in the woods with a bunch of old guys for 4 days. But by the first night, he actually seemed into it. We let him carry a .22, taught him how to gut a squirrel, and by Saturday night, he was laughing around the fire like he'd been coming for years. Sunday morning, we all went out for a final hunt before packing up. We spread out across a few miles of thick forest, with the plan to meet back at the cabin by noon. Tyler said he wanted to go solo, try tracking the creek bed nearby. It was shallow that year, barely a trickle of water winding through the woods. I told him to stay close and keep his walkie on. By 1, he still wasn't back. We figured maybe he lost track of time. That happens sometimes. But when we tried him on the walkie, there was nothing, just static. We fanned out again, shouting his name, retracing every trail and game path. At first it was just frustrating. Then it got confusing. Then it got terrifying. We called the sheriff by sundown. A full search and rescue effort launched that night, with dogs, ATVs, even a helicopter by morning. They found Tyler's footprints along the creek and a few candy wrappers he'd brought from the gas station. But then, nothing. They just stopped. After 4 days, the search was called off. No sign of struggle. No scent trail. It was like the forest had opened up and swallowed him whole. His parents were destroyed. My uncle couldn't even bring himself to step foot in the woods again. The cabin sat untouched for the next year. Then last October, my older brother Jeff decided we should go back. We were all hesitant, but he insisted. It's what Dad would have wanted, he said. And we can honor Tyler too. Light a fire, say something for him. So we went. Just the two of us. The first night was quiet. Cold. The fire didn't feel comforting like it used to. It felt exposed. We drank in silence mostly. Talked about Tyler, about how he used to hum to himself when he was nervous. How he never went anywhere without that ugly camo hoodie. Then, around midnight, Jeff checked the trail cam. We'd set up one of those motion-triggered wildlife cams on a tree just outside the clearing, angled toward the trailhead. It was a habit we'd picked up over the years, to see what came by while we were asleep. Usually just deer, raccoons, the occasional fox. But this time, there was something else. Jeff called me over without saying a word. I looked at the little screen. It was grainy black and white footage, time-stamped around 2:12 a.m. the night before. A figure, barefoot, standing at the edge of the trees. Thin, shirtless, just watching the cabin. At first I thought it was a trick of the shadows. But then the next frame confirmed it. Same figure, maybe 15 feet closer. And the next, closer again. It didn't move like a deer or a bear. It didn't move at all between shots. It just appeared, closer and closer, always staring at the cabin. Eyes wide, mouth open, like it was waiting. Zoom in, I said. Jeff did. It was hard to see with all the pixelation, but my stomach dropped. It was a kid. Skinny, pale, maybe 13. But the face wasn't right. The mouth was too wide. And the eyes, they were too big, too still. The footage ended before it got closer than the tree line. We didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, we hiked out to where the figure had been standing. There were footprints. Bare ones. Small. They circled the cabin, always staying just out of sight from the windows. We left that afternoon, cutting the trip short. Neither of us said it out loud, but we both felt the same thing. That had been Tyler, or something wearing his shape. I tried to convince myself it was a prank. A sick, twisted prank. But nobody even knew we were going out there. And no one could get that deep into the woods without us hearing a vehicle. Not barefoot. Back home, I couldn't let it go. I started reading about disappearances in the area. Turns out, Tyler wasn't the first. Over the past 30 years, there have been at least 4 other kids who went missing within a 10-mile radius of that cabin. Always during fall. Always near the creek. None of them ever found. And then last month, Jeff sent me something that made my blood run cold. A new trail cam clip. He'd gone back alone for a single night. Said he couldn't stop thinking about it. He set the camera up in the same spot. At 2:09 a.m., something walked past the lens again. The same pale figure. This time it was crawling on all fours. It stopped directly in front of the camera, just inches from the lens, and smiled. Wide. Wrong. Like it had learned what smiling should look like but didn't understand why. Its teeth were jagged. Filthy. Its eyes didn't blink. Then it stood up too fast, too smoothly, and walked backward into the woods. Not turned around. Literally walked backward, legs bending the wrong way. I don't know what that thing is. I don't know if it is Tyler, or if it used him to become something else. But I do know this. It's still out there. And it remembers us. This happened about 5 years ago, and it still sticks with me in a way I can't quite explain. I don't scare easily. I grew up around country roads, bad weather, and sketchy towns. But this was something else. This felt wrong from the start. It was late September. I was driving back to Tuscaloosa from Meridian, Mississippi after visiting an old friend from college. I'd left a little later than I should have, and by the time I got on the road, it was after 10 p.m. The weather had been clear when I left, but halfway through rural Alabama, I drove straight into one of those sudden backwoods storms. The sky opened up like it had a score to settle. Torrential rain. Thunder so loud it rattled the windows. Windshield wipers barely keeping up, and my high beams doing nothing but lighting up sheets of water. The GPS lost signal somewhere between a couple back roads, and I ended up veering off onto a 2-lane highway with no shoulder, no streetlights, just trees and blackness in every direction. I remember thinking I'd made a wrong turn when I saw him. Just a flicker at first in my headlights. A figure on the side of the road. He was standing right at the edge of the trees, soaked from head to toe, one thumb out like something out of a movie. Just standing there, motionless except for the rain pouring down his shoulders. I slowed down. Not completely sure why. I've never picked up a hitchhiker in my life. But something about the way he looked just... I don't know. It wasn't that he seemed harmless. It was more that he seemed out of place. He was wearing an old brown canvas jacket, jeans, and what looked like work boots. Looked like someone who might have been walking a long time. No bag. No umbrella. Just standing there, still as a post. I rolled down the window a few inches. "You okay, man?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, kind of quietly, "Heading north." I hesitated. "Where to exactly?" "Just up a ways," he said. Against my better judgment, I told him to get in. He climbed in without a word, dripping all over the seat. Didn't smell bad or anything, just that damp, earthy smell, like wet leaves. He closed the door gently and folded his hands in his lap. I started driving. The next 20 minutes were silent. He didn't say a word, just stared out the window like he was watching something I couldn't see. I kept glancing at him, part of me trying to assess if I just made a really dumb mistake. He looked worn down, pale skin, gaunt face, hair matted to his forehead. Could have been anywhere between 35 and 50, honestly. There was something about his eyes I couldn't place, like they were focused on something far away. I cleared my throat and tried to make conversation. "You from around here?" He didn't respond for a while. Then finally, "Used to be." His voice was low, hoarse like he hadn't used it in a while. "You got family nearby?" I asked. Another pause. "Not anymore." That was it. Eventually, I gave up trying to talk and just focused on the road. We drove in silence until I spotted a gas station up ahead. One of those sad, middle-of-nowhere places with flickering lights and cracked pavement. Figured it was a good place to stop, let him out, and grab a coffee to keep me awake. As I pulled up, he finally spoke again. "Thanks for the ride." I nodded, trying not to show how relieved I was. "No problem, man." He opened the door and stepped out without looking back. Didn't head for the door, just walked slowly around the side of the building and vanished out of sight. I sat there for a second. Then I noticed something on the seat. A wallet. I picked it up, dark leather, scuffed and soft from age. I opened it up, expecting maybe a license, a few bucks, some receipts. There wasn't much. No credit cards. No phone. Just a folded, water-warped photo of a woman and a little boy standing in front of a red brick house. And an old Alabama driver's license. The name read, Michael D. Harlan. I stared at the expiration date. March 1974. In the photo on the ID, it was him. The man I had just let out of my car. Same sunken cheeks, same deep-set eyes, even the same damn jacket. I felt my stomach drop. I got out and ran inside, holding the wallet like it was radioactive. There was a guy behind the counter, mid-50s, watching something on a tiny TV. I walked up and held out the wallet. "Hey, this guy just left this in my car. I picked him up on the road back there." He said he was heading north. The guy barely glanced at it. Then he did a double take. "Where'd you say you picked him up?" "Just down the road, maybe 15 minutes. He took the wallet, opened it, and his face went pale. "Holy hell," he muttered. Then he disappeared into the back and came out a minute later with an old laminated clipping, yellowed with time. It was a newspaper article. Headline, "Local man vanishes after leaving work. No leads in 40-year mystery." Below it was a black and white photo. A younger version of the man who'd just been in my passenger seat. Same eyes, same jacket. "That's him," I said, my voice shaking. The guy behind the counter looked like he'd seen a ghost. Michael Harlan. Disappeared in a storm back in '74. Walked out of the textile plant late one night and never made it home. They found his car parked, keys inside. Some folks said he ran off. Others thought he got robbed and dumped in the woods. I swallowed. But his ID was just in my car. He nodded slowly. "That ain't the first time someone's brought it in." I blinked. "What?" He leaned in a little. "Every couple years, someone stops here, tells the same story. Man walking in the rain. Barely talks. Leaves the wallet behind." I couldn't speak. "I'll hang on to it," he said quietly. "Always do." I left, shaken, barely able to drive. When I got home, I cleaned the passenger seat. It was still wet, like someone had been sitting there soaked through. But the water smelled like mildew. Like it had been there a long, long time. For weeks, I tried to forget. I told myself it was a prank, or maybe just some weird coincidence. But 3 months later, I was cleaning out my trunk before a road trip, and I found the wallet again, tucked behind the spare tire. Same wallet, but this time, the ID was gone. The only thing inside was the old photo of the woman and boy. And on the back, written in faded blue ink, were 4 words I know I didn't write. "Thanks for the ride. I haven't picked up a hitchhiker since, and I don't think I ever will." I grew up just outside of Decatur, Alabama, in a little house near the edge of Wheeler National Wildlife Refuge. If you've never been out that way, it's miles of backwater sloughs, floodplain, and marshy woods thick with cypress and cottonmouths. It's quiet country. Peaceful, mostly. But folks out there have stories. The kind that don't get told in town. When I was a kid, my grandpa used to say, "Don't go near the slough after dark. Not unless you want something following you home." I figured it was just one of those old southern superstitions. The kind of thing grandparents say to keep kids out of trouble. We all heard them. Don't whistle after midnight. Don't look between the trees too long. Don't answer your name if it's whispered from the water. And don't follow the lights. That one stuck with me the most. If you ever see a light bobbing out there in the trees, Grandpa said, just turn around. Go home. Don't you go following it, no matter what it sounds like. Of course, when you're a teenager, you don't really listen. Not until it's too late. This happened the summer I turned 17. I just finished my junior year, and I was working afternoons at a local auto shop. In the evenings, I'd ride my four-wheeler down the old trails behind our house. There's a network of them that runs all the way down to the edge of the slough, right where the trees thin out and the cattails start rising out of the muck. One night, I stayed out later than I meant to. Lost track of time, riding with a buddy until the sun dipped below the tree line. He peeled off toward his place, and I cut back alone, taking the long trail through the woods. It was just turning dark when I heard it. A soft humming, barely audible at first, almost like someone singing far off. It didn't sound mechanical, like a motor or an animal. It sounded human. I slowed the ATV and cut the engine, and that's when I saw it. A light. Small, pale bluish white, floating maybe 4 feet off the ground between the trees, about 100 yards down the trail. I stared at it for a few seconds. It moved, slow and steady, drifting through the underbrush like it wasn't touching anything. Just gliding. No flashlight beam. No figure holding it. Just the light. At first, I thought maybe it was another rider. Some guy out there with a lantern or a weird headlamp. Then I heard it again. That hum. A low, lilting melody with no words. And underneath it, something else. My name. Whispered, like it was being carried on the wind. Caleb. I froze. Every hair on my neck stood up. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The light pulsed once, brighter, then started drifting toward the slough. Something in me said leave. But something else, the stupid part, wanted to know. I wanted to believe it was a trick. Maybe a drone. Maybe some drunk old-timer playing games. So I followed. I left the ATV and stepped off the trail, pushing through the trees, heart pounding. The ground got wetter as I moved, soft and spongy underfoot. The smell of stagnant water thickened. Mosquitoes buzzed around my ears. But I kept my eyes on the light. It stayed ahead of me, always just far enough to stay out of reach. Dipping between the trees, weaving like it was leading me somewhere. It brought me to a narrow bank of the slough I'd never seen before. The trees opened up into a half-circle clearing, quiet and low. The water there was dark, still, like a mirror under moonlight. And the light stopped. Just hovered over the water, a few feet from shore. That's when I noticed there wasn't just one. There were more. Dozens. All faint. All slowly blinking into view across the surface of the slough. Like stars rising out of the water. I stood there, staring transfixed. I should have run. I know that now. But something about those lights made it hard to think clearly. They were beautiful in a way that didn't feel real. Like looking into something ancient. Something that wanted to be looked at. Then I saw the shape. Just beneath the surface, under the first light, a pale figure began to rise. At first, it looked like a body floating up. A woman, I think. Skin gray-blue, hair fanned out around her head like riverweed. Her arms were outstretched, palms up, like she was offering herself. But she wasn't dead. Her eyes opened, and they were pitch black. The humming stopped, and the lights blinked out. All of them, gone in an instant, like someone had turned off the sky. Everything was silent. Then the woman in the water moved. Fast. She lunged. I stumbled back just as her hands broke the surface, grabbing at nothing. Her face was inches from the bank now, eyes locked on mine, mouth open, no sound coming out. I ran. I didn't look back. I tore through the woods like the ground was on fire, smacking into branches, scraping my arms raw. I didn't stop until I could see the taillight of my four-wheeler glowing red in the dark. I jumped on and fired it up, speeding all the way home without stopping. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't tell my parents. But I told my grandpa. He just looked at me and nodded once. Said, "Now you know." I asked him what it was. What she was. He said, "They call them watchers. Spirits that live in the water. Ain't people anymore. Just things wearing skin. They call to you with light and song, and if you answer, they take something." I asked what they take. He said, "Sometimes your mind. Sometimes your voice. Sometimes your soul, if it's loose enough." I never went back to that trail again. But sometimes, on still nights, I'll step outside and listen. And I swear, I can still hear the humming. Faint. Sweet. Calling my name from somewhere deep in the slough. My grandpa passed away last spring, and I was the one stuck cleaning up what was left of his place. He lived just outside Clanton, Alabama, on a beat-up 5-acre stretch that had been in the family for generations. The kind of property where the grass grows knee-high, and the mailbox leans like it's trying to leave. I hadn't been out there in years. Not since I was a teenager. My mom stopped taking us to visit when Grandpa started getting weird, as she put it. I didn't think much of it at the time. He was just old, quiet, kept to himself. But after what I found out there, I don't think she ever told us the full story. The main house was falling apart when I pulled up. Ivy had claimed one whole side, and there were shingles scattered like broken teeth across the yard. Inside, the air was stale, like old dust and something sour hiding behind it. I spent the first few hours just opening windows, letting the light in, trying not to let the silence get to me. That's when I noticed the barn. It sat at the far end of the property, half hidden by trees. Tall, red, faded to pink in the sun and streaked with years of grime. It used to be where he kept tools, lumber, an old tractor he never got running again. But now, it looked sealed. I didn't notice right away, not until I got closer. The front doors, those big wooden ones that used to slide open on rusty tracks, were shut tight. At first, I thought they were just jammed, swollen with rain. But when I looked closer, I saw something that made my stomach turn. Nails. Dozens of them. Driven in from inside the barn. Through the cracks between the slats. Bent and hammered through the doorframe, sticking out like thorns. There were even 2 or 3 bent nails sticking out of the latch from the inside, as if someone had tried to weld the doors shut without using fire. That didn't make sense. The only way to do that was to be inside while you did it. I circled the barn slowly, hard thudding. Every window had been boarded up from within. I tested one of the smaller side doors, same thing. Nailed shut, with boards braced against the interior, visible through the gaps. Whoever sealed this place up hadn't wanted anything getting out. I don't know why, but I took a picture. Just stood there, holding my phone like I needed proof. That's when I noticed the smell. It was faint at first. Earthy. Wet. But wrong. Like mildew mixed with rot. And it was coming from the cracks in the door. I should have walked away. I know that now. But I didn't. Instead, I went back to the truck and grabbed a crowbar. It took nearly 30 minutes to pull the front doors open. Every time I pried up a nail, another 2 seemed to appear beneath it, hammered in at weird angles like they'd been done in a panic. Whoever did this was desperate and terrified. Eventually, one side gave. The door creaked open a few inches, then shuddered on its warped track, and something heavy shifted inside. The smell hit me full force then, thick and moldy and sharp, like ammonia and damp meat. I pushed the door open the rest of the way and stepped inside. It was dark. I had to use my phone flashlight to see anything. The first thing I noticed was the walls. They were covered in scratches. Deep ones. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Clawed into the wood from floor to ceiling. Some vertical, some diagonal, like whatever made them had been pacing, circling, trying to find a way out. The floor was scattered with old tools. Rusted metal. A broken shovel. Half a rake. And near the back, an iron cage. It wasn't very big. Maybe 4 feet tall. Made from old fencing material, reinforced with chains and wire. It had a lock on the outside, but the door was hanging open, bent like it had been forced. Inside the cage was a pile of cloth, torn flannel, stained jeans, something that might have once been a pillow. All of it was shredded, and next to it, claw marks. So many claw marks. I backed up slowly, light shaking in my hand. That's when I saw the writing. On the far wall, carved deep into the wood with something jagged, were 5 words. Don't feed it after dark. I stared at that sentence for what felt like an hour, trying to make sense of it, trying to process what this place was. I didn't hear the noise behind me until it was close. A soft scrape, then a low, wet breath. I turned just in time to catch a glimpse of something slipping through a gap in the boards near the back, something pale and long-limbed, with skin like stretched wax and fingers that bent the wrong way. It vanished before my light could catch it. I ran, didn't bother closing the barn behind me, didn't stop until I was in the truck with the engine roaring. I left everything behind, never even finished the clean-out. Told the lawyer I couldn't do it. Let them sell the land off to whoever wanted it. I don't know what my grandpa kept in that barn. I don't know what it ate, or how he kept it fed, but I know he was trying to contain it. And if it got out that night, well, some things don't stay buried in old barns forever, especially in Alabama.